everyone, my name is David, and I like talking about movies and stuff. So let's talk about some of the movie-related topics that we learned about during the first week of October, starting with the fact that according to Variety, a film based on Beyoncé's Renaissance tour will be coming to theaters. The news comes shortly after Taylor Swift announced her Eras Tour concert film, but the two projects do appear to be slightly different. As far as I can tell, Taylor Swift's movie will be of a single performance that was filmed over a single night, while Beyoncé's movie will incorporate highlights from the full run of the Renaissance tour, along with a documentary-style account of how she recorded the album and conceived the tour. So it's possible that Beyoncé could have planned on releasing some kind of film before Taylor Swift announced her Eras Tour movie, but she probably did decide to give the movie a theatrical release after seeing how much money Taylor Swift was making. Of course, I don't think that anyone else can earn the same amount of money that Taylor Swift can. After all, concert films aren't exactly a new concept, but since there aren't a lot of big movies playing in theaters right now is a good time for any artist to cash in on a financial opportunity. And that's exactly what I think Beyoncé did here. A trailer for her upcoming concert film was released on Sunday, revealing that Renaissance, a film by Beyoncé, will be playing in theaters on December 1st, and that tickets for the movie are currently on sale. Speaking of Taylor Swift, the iconic artist is rumored to have an appearance in Deadpool 3. Of course, no one has made any official statement on the matter, but the rumor was spread even further when Taylor Swift was spotted hanging out with Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman, and Sean Levy, meaning that she was literally seen hanging out with Deadpool himself, along with Wolverine and the director of the upcoming sequel. Now, just because Taylor Swift was seen with the cast and crew of Deadpool 3 does not mean that she will definitely be in the movie herself, but it does seem like an awfully big coincidence, especially since the rumors of her involvement started way before these pictures were even taken. Either way, I don't really have an opinion on the matter, because Taylor Swift is undeniably an incredibly talented musician, but I don't think she's a great actor. So if she does have a role in Deadpool 3, I do hope that it's nothing more than a fun little cameo. After all, Taylor Swift has appeared in several movies already, and her involvement in each film did nothing to boost box office revenue, so it's not like Deadpool 3 needs to have Taylor Swift in it. But she is a hot name right now, so a brief little cameo would be fun for all the Swifties out there. But I guess we'll see if Taylor Swift winds up in Deadpool 3 or not when the movie comes out on May 3rd. Speaking of X-Men, Marvel will start having writer meetings in the fall to hear pitches for their upcoming X-Men movie. Of course, fans have been begging for a new X-Men film ever since Disney bought Fox back in 2019, but Kevin Feige has chosen to take his time with introducing any X-Men characters since so many other MCU projects were already in development since 2019. That being said, Marvel has managed to tease fans with some X-Men content. For example, Namor and Miss Marvel were introduced to us as mutants, Patrick Stewart returned to play Professor X in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, the animated revival series X-Men 97 is expected to premiere on Disney Plus in 2024, and Hugh Jackman will return to play Wolverine in the upcoming Deadpool 3. But this is the first bit of news to indicate that Marvel is actively developing their own live-action X-Men films set within the proper MCU timeline. So it should be an exciting time to be an X-Men fan right now. Though it will be a while before we get to hear any more news on the project, since no official release date for the X-Men movie has been given at this time. According to the World of Real, Eon Productions and Amazon Studios are actively pursuing Christopher Nolan to be the director of the next James Bond movie. Of course, Nolan has expressed interest in directing a Bond film for years now, but he also likes to have full creative control over his projects, which is probably why he never got to direct a Bond movie before. But now that Eon and Amazon are looking to reboot the franchise, Nolan could be the perfect candidate for them, especially since he has some free time following the release and huge success of Oppenheimer. According to the report, Eon's primary objective is to secure Nolan for 2 to 3 Bond films, followed by his involvement as an executive producer in future productions. However, Eon may be looking to initiate a modern-day reboot of the James Bond series, where Nolan has expressed a desire to adapt Ian Fleming's original novels in their period settings, adhering closely to the source material. So the future of the Bond series still remains unclear. As a Nolan fan myself, it's easy to see how Bond has influenced Nolan's filmography, so I would personally love to see what a Nolan Bond movie would look like, especially since it could force him to make a movie with a straightforward and linear narrative that doesn't involve wibbly-wobbly time-traveling mechanics. He hasn't made one of those since The Dark Knight Rises, but only time will tell if Nolan will actually end up at the helm of Bond's future. According to Deadline, Mind Riot Entertainment will be developing a movie based on Oceangate's Titan submersible tragedy. The news comes shortly after the announcement that Mind Riot will also be developing a docu-series based on the same incident. Studio founder Jonathan Kesey, along with head of European content Justin McGregor, will be co-writing the feature together. While talking about the upcoming project, Kesey said, "The Titan tragedy is yet another example of a misinformed and quick-to-pronounce system. In this case, our non-stop 24/7 media cycle that convicts and ruins the lives of so many people without any due process. Our film will not only honor all of those involved with the submersible tragedy and their families, but the feature will serve as a vessel that also addresses a more macro concern about the nature of media today. Truth is all that matters, and the world has a right to know the truth. Always. Not the salacious bait crammed down our throats by seeking their 5 minutes of fame. Life is not black and white. It's complicated. There's nuance. Always nuance." And while I technically agree with that statement, I find it ironic that this news is coming out only several months after the tragedy occurred, especially when Mindhunt just announced a docu-series of the same name. Because that shows me that this studio is trying to capitalize off of the recent timing of the tragedy, which feels very exploitative to me. Judging by the fact that I've never heard of Mindhunt Entertainment before, I'm sure that the studio is trying to get their 5 minutes of fame too, just like everybody else. So I don't think it was necessary for Kesey to sound so condescending here, because he actually came across as a hypocrite to me. Granted, he does have access to unreleased footage of the Oceangate tragedy, but that doesn't mean he has the moral high ground here. Everyone else is entitled to have their own opinion on the matter. And just because Mindhunt will be the first studio to tell this story, in both a fictionalized and non-fictionalized manner, does not mean that they will tell the best or most accurate version of the story here. No official release date for Salvaged, either the motion picture or the docu-series, have yet to be given at this time. According to Variety, Disney Plus will start cracking down on password sharing next month. Meaning that if you're piggybacking off of someone else's Disney Plus account, you may soon have to pay up in order to access the streaming service. Of course, Netflix started cracking down on password sharing over the summer, and though their plan was initially met with criticism, the streaming platform did end up seeing their subscriber count going up, which means that most people who were using someone else's Netflix account did opt to pay for the service themselves. So Disney may be trying to replicate the same results, since the company lost over 300,000 subscribers since July 1st. However, Disney is also claiming that they reserve the right to terminate any account that they deem is violating the new terms of service. So if you happen to be sharing your Disney Plus account with anyone else, Disney may kick you off of the service completely, which does sound a bit harsh if you ask me, but it is their service and they make the rules, so if you want to keep being a Disney Plus subscriber, you're gonna have to agree with their terms of service. Disney is expected to roll out their new password sharing policies on November 1st. Speaking of streaming services, according to the Wall Street Journal, Netflix is planning on raising the price of its streaming service. It's currently unclear as to how much the prices will be raised by or when the new prices will go into effect, but it's expected that Netflix will begin rolling out the new price tag in the US and Canadian markets first, sometime after the actors' strike ends. I assume the platform will try to blame the strikers for the new pay increase, since creators are asking for more streaming residuals, but streaming services have been raising their prices over the past few years, with Netflix's last increase occurring in January of 2022, so this concept is nothing new. However, with the price of every streaming service getting higher and higher, when will consumers begin to have enough? With streaming prices currently being more than cable ever was, when will we see the streaming bubble start to burst? I guess only time will tell if the current streaming model can remain stable. If you'd like to know what I've personally been up to this week, I got the chance to see Saw X in theaters, and I absolutely loved it. Even as a longtime fan of the franchise, I was genuinely shocked to see how good this movie turned out to be. The performances were great, the script was solid, the traps were as gory and as clever as always, but the story was also filled with a surprising amount of heart, which is something that I never expected to say about a Saw film. And all of that added up to make one of the best and most complex entries into the Saw series ever, meaning that Saw X would definitely get a recommendation from me. I also got to see No One Will Save You on Hulu, and I thought it was fine. The movie isn't necessarily bad, but for a horror film, it didn't exactly feel scary. And for an original movie, it didn't exactly do anything new. Thankfully, Caitlin Dever does deliver a solid performance, but she wasn't enough to elevate the material on her own. But while I was disappointed with the movie overall, No One Will Save You would still get a moderate recommendation from me. Next, I finally got the chance to watch the raunchy Jennifer Lawrence comedy No Hard Feelings, and it was okay, I guess. I did enjoy how unconventional the story was, because this is definitely not your typical romantic comedy. However, the characters weren't too memorable, the plot wasn't too engaging, the themes were paper thin, and the comedy wasn't as funny as it could have been. So while I'm glad that Jennifer Lawrence got to have some fun on this project, I know she's capable of delivering better material than this, which means that No Hard Feelings would probably only get a tentative recommendation from me. And finally, I got to see Insidious: The Red Door, and I thought it was pretty underwhelming. I was rooting for Patrick Wilson's directorial debut to be good, especially since I am a fan of the original Insidious, and while I can say that Wilson's sense of direction wasn't necessarily bad, nothing about it was particularly special either. So, Insidious the Red Door turned out to be a disappointing ending to this franchise, and it would unfortunately not get a recommendation from me. On the TV side of things, I did get to watch the latest episode of Futurama last week, and I did enjoy it quite a bit. The episode dealt with scientific concepts like simulation theory and time dilation, which were perfect concepts for a sci-fi show like Futurama. Especially since those concepts made for a really poignant episode that featured an emotionally resonating theme. So I think the episode made for a perfectly satisfying mid-season finale. And while it may be too soon to say, I think I will look back on the episode as one of my favorite episodes of Futurama in general. So I cannot wait to see this series return. Disney also released the final episode of Ahsoka, and I basically hated it. I personally thought that the story was frustratingly predictable, the action sequences were flat and unengaging, the dialogue was infuriatingly vague, the performances were as stiff as ever, and the themes were bafflingly confusing. By the end of the episode, I was left wondering, what was the point of this show? And the only conclusion I could come up with was to act as a bridge between Star Wars Rebels and Dave Filoni's upcoming feature film. But if that really is the case, then Ahsoka will be remembered as this weird in-between series that isn't inherently satisfying on its own, because it doesn't really stand up on its own 2 feet. This show was meant to appeal to a niche section of the Star Wars fan base, a section that I would consider myself to be a part of, and yet I was still disappointed by it. So even though I really wanted to love this series, Ahsoka ultimately did not end up working for me. But thankfully, Disney also released the premiere of Loki Season 2, and I did enjoy that episode quite a bit. I thought the story was quite engaging, even when I was confused by all of the new TVA jargon, since there are a lot of time-traveling mechanics that were introduced into this episode. I was still intrigued by everything that was going on. And that's probably because I love these characters. Tom Hiddleston has an excellent rapport with Owen Wilson, so I was glad to see that their characters were reunited here. And I was especially glad to see Ke-Huy Quan in this episode, since he provided an excellent amount of comedic relief. So I would say that Season 2 of Loki is off to a good start. I just hope that it can keep up with this pace all the way through to the finale. And those were all the things that I watched during the week. I'll be expanding upon my thoughts for every movie and TV episode that I talked about here, and if you're interested in listening to said thoughts, you can find my full reviews on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast app of choice. If I have time, I'd like to create some YouTube videos from the audio too, so you can subscribe to my YouTube channel just as well. And if you'd like to hear me talk about other movie-related topics, be sure to follow me on Instagram and TikTok. But as always, thanks for listening.